Good morning. This is an episode of the morning meeting like no other, so we dive right in. Sean, Dan, and I are going to quickly try to do the whole thing in an hour. We got a lot to do. We have the people's poll. We have a robust set of topics to talk about, and the president is supposed to hold a press conference at 9:30 this morning that we want to cover as well. So here we go, gentlemen. Good morning.
Buenos dias.
The president's press conference with Bobby Kennedy to talk about this very big story. In some ways, of all the stories going on, in some ways it could be the biggest. A proposal to dramatically lower the price of prescription drugs in the United States. We'll talk about it in a moment. Then he departs the White House at 10:35, so right when that ends, because he'll probably take a lot of questions at that, is the spidey sense of many. Heads to Andrews and then embarks on this several day long trip throughout the Middle East. His first trip, not counting the emergency trip to go to the Pope's funeral overseas as president, where he's got a bunch going on. And the focus of the trip is to turn the U.S. relationship with the region from primarily military and diplomatic to economic. We will talk about that in a minute. Capitol Hill, don't know what the vice president's doing. Scott Bessent, I learned yesterday, is on the trip with the president. Not surprising, since the focus is economics. We'll be trying to figure out who's on the trip and, more importantly, who's not on the trip among senior officials in the administration. House is formally not in, but they're doing a lot on reconciliation. Speakers meeting with folks from Ways and Means and the blue state Republicans who care about SALT at 10 a.m. Jason Smith, the chair of Ways and Means, briefs conference members on the tax portion of the bill at 11. There's some other small things going on, but we will skip it. So we're going to run through some big issues, and then we're going to bring David Burrell in to unveil the People's Poll. Many of you have submitted questions that are being used in the poll, so we'll be excited to share that with you. Then we'll take your questions again when the president starts his press conference scheduled for 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. We will at least dip into that. So, Sean, China. Critics are saying this isn't a real deal, that the president wasted a lot of time. I'm surprised at how skeptical some are about this deal, a frame outline of a deal. But where do you think the U.S. and China and the larger strategy on trade stands after this morning's announcement?
I think it's moving in a very positive direction. I mean, at the end of the day, anything that can get us moving towards a fairer system, more market access is good for the country. And I know some people want to quibble with how much, but again, this goes back to my simple analogy. If you start off the day with $1 more than you had, that's progress. And what we're seeing right now is the president getting more than we had before, tackling stuff that everybody else has made excuses about. And the critique that people have is the process. And, I was thinking about this. Everyone uses the word chaotic. And my response would, that they should be like, you guys have been dogmatic. Every time these guys go, we're going to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. I get people don't like always the president's process. But at the end of the day, it's about results. And this is moving the ball in a forward direction.
Dan.
I don't know what we've moved forward. There is no deal. As some of us have predicted for a month, he found a way to get out of this. He's going to pull them down. I bet you in the next 90 days, they pull them down even further. The data coming in to our Treasury Department was horrific of what was on the verge of happening in this country. He knew it. We had to get out of this. We'll see what happens in a few months. The Chinese are the masters at walking things into the ground.
I agree way more with Sean than with you, Dan, because no one was doing anything about it. But it's not over yet. Let's see what GDP is like next year. My sources who told me before during the transition that tariffs were all about leverage and that he would never destroy the world economy around tariffs are texting me today saying, "See, we told you. This is he wasn't going to show his cards in the front end." I agree, it's not done, but we have to rebalance our economic relationship with China. This opens the door to that. May not happen, but it opens the door to it.
What is it? I mean, I mean it. There are no real. The whole point of China was to reshore and get stuff out of there.
Yeah, well, that's not the whole. That's not the whole point.
It's to get part of it, but that was a big part of it.
It's to get more access to their markets, but you're not going to move that stuff here overnight. And
I agree.
And he's in a position now to make deals to do it. He didn't solve the problem, but he's I agree with Sean. People talk about chaos. It's like, just care about results. All right. The prescription drug announcement, huge deal. And again, an executive order will be challenged in court. It might be struck down. he has an opportunity now to get a bipartisan piece of legislation that mirrors the executive order. And we have to be honest, Democratic presidents have been afraid of going against big pharma. They want the contributions, the campaign contributions, and they're swayed by their lobbyists. So Dan, I think there's no way to look at this, but the president's trying to do something that the country wants and that Democrats were afraid to do, correct?
Absolutely. It's excellent. Bravo. It's like Nixon going to China. It's great.
Sean.
Oh, I think it's better than Nixon going to China. I mean, if you think about where we ended up in China, I think this is huge. Like at the end, what this really shows is pharma has basically been saying U.S. will pay the bulk of all these costs, and then we'll give a better deal to all these other countries. And when you look at what they do to, what the same drug costs in other countries, I've just been tired of hearing the excuses. I'm all for the capitalistic system. I am a true, I think, free trader, but what's gone on is ridiculous. And I think the president tackling this, to your point, Mark, the political significance of this is almost bigger than the financial significance. The savings that people will yield on this is huge. But at the end of the day, a politician taking on big pharma is massive. And I'm glad the president's doing it.
I've read all the responses I've seen from big pharma, and their spin on this is just ludicrous. I mean, again, it's not a perfect system. The president's not proposing something perfect, but if Joe Biden were doing this, every Democrat would be applauding it. Some have, but let's see what happens.
And can I just add, the reason no one did this is because pharma ran some of the most sophisticated ad campaigns to take stuff down for years.
Correct.
The fear was not campaign money being cut off. The fear was the ad wars that would come at you and take you into the mud. So
yeah,
but can I, Dan,
a little bit of both, but you're right.
Can I just say this, because Dan's touching on something really important, that like in Washington there have been sort of third rail organizations. Both sides have some degree of them, but I think pharma transcended that. It basically had both parties, paralyzed. Right? Yeah. Thank you for being more blunt. And I think that what this shows is, as I said, just so significant politically that people are willing to take it on despite the number. But also, I think that this just shows that they're not what they once were. Pharma used to be feared. Like those guys would walk in the office and just be like, "Hey, shut up." And everyone would go, I'm sorry. And now they're willing to just go straight on to them and say, sit down. And I think that there's very few places, as I've said before, that will talk about this because the media is bought and paid for by big pharma as well. And I think that it is going to be a story that will never really be told, how big taking on big pharma really is politically.
Well, let's see what happens, because they're not going to give up. And there is bipartisan legislation, big tent, that mirrors what the president's doing through the executive order. And let's see if the administration calls their bluff and says, okay, let's pass it. Let's get a bipartisan bill. All right. Ukraine, Russia, very complicated. Lots went on over the weekend. Again, not getting so much attention because of India, Pakistan got settled over the weekend and other things. But let's talk about it. Russia says, let's meet. Ukraine and the U.S. said, let's have a ceasefire and then meet. The presidents kind of went back and forth in terms of who he was siding with on that dispute. But now Zelensky's saying, all right, Putin, meet me in Turkey on Thursday and let's talk. Dan, will they be meeting on Thursday in Turkey?
No. And I go back, what are we going to do to pressure Putin?
Yeah. Sean.
They're going to meet. They will meet.
Okay.
Putin and Zelensky will meet this week?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. That's a big one. All right.
But by the way, the comma is, and then what happened? No. Don't. No, here. I think they're going to meet, and then Putin will obfuscate and say, I didn't like blah blah blah. But if he doesn't meet, he's done.
Okay. If they meet, who's more likely to kill the other one? Like literally kill them?
Oh, Zelensky.
Is more likely to be killed or kill?
Well, he wants to. He is more likely to want to kill, but Putin would take anybody out.
Okay. All right. I mentioned before, this trip, I think, again, because there's so much going on, they're deliverables, as they call it, on presidential trips. So when a president goes on an international trip, the staff in advance secretly arranges what are called deliverables, so that the trip is pre-baked as a success because they have in their pocket some things they know they're going to announce. My understanding is this trip is filled with deliverables. There are more deliverables on this trip than white good and plenty and a box of good and plenty. A lot of deliverables. So, Sean, what will be the measure of success of this trip?
I think there's going to be a massive amount of foreign direct investment, military purchases, et cetera, from both Saudi and others. So to me, it's going to be the number.
Dan?
No one knows how to flatter like the people, the leaders of that region. I think the big thing to watch for is what ends up. I think a lot will be pledged, a lot will be said. What ends up happening?
I'll tell you this, to your point, when we landed last time in Saudi, you would have thought that we were in, the equivalent of Trump world at Disney, because it was like buildings had his name emblazoned with his face on it. I mean, oh my gosh, it was awesome.
Reporters who are watching this to steal news from us and take it as your own, meet me at camera 2. Although the trip is focused on economics, watch for a potential mega diplomatic deliverable. You heard it here first, I think. Watch. I can't say what it is, but there may be a very big diplomatic deliverable. Edan Alexander, the last American known to be alive, held captive in Gaza, is being picked up today, we believe, by the president's friend. What's his name? Witkoff. Dan or Sean first. What's the status of Gaza? The president's going to the region. He's not meeting with Bibi on this trip. What's the status of? And Bibi says they're going into Gaza if they don't have all the hostages soon. What's the status of Gaza and Israel right now?
Unclear. I think Israel's trying to do trying to figure out how far it can go without causing some backlash. But I think there's a little uncertainty as far as where we actually are.
Dan.
Yeah, no one controls Netanyahu. He's going to do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
to
but this Hamas thing, these guys released Edan Alexander, I think, to sort of buy a little goodwill.
Yep. All right.
That's why I'm saying it's unclear, because if that hadn't happened, I think the president would have every time he gets real close, Hamas is like, "Oh, here you go."
Yes. All right. We got to go quick because we got to get to the people's poll in a moment. Dan, the Iran nuclear talks under the radar are speeding along here. How bullish are you on the possibility of a deal?
I'm bullish because Trump doesn't want war, but under the radar as well. MAGA's coming apart over this one. There's not agreement.
Yeah, Laura Loomer's very upset about this. Sean.
You're all talking.
I agree. I'm actually I don't trust Iran. I think it's stupid to have a deal. I'd rather isolate them. So I think they may get a deal, but I'm not liking it. I will just say one last thing, because we went through this real quick. Just stop for a second. Ukraine, Russia meeting this week. India, Pakistan ceasefire. Return the last U.S. hostage in Gaza. Prescription drugs this morning. China deal over the weekend. The trip to Saudi and a free plane. That's not a bad weekend.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. A lot of stuff.
I know, but I'm just thinking, stop and think of the totality of what happened in 48 hours.
I agree. Hold on. We got to get through stuff. None of it's complete. All right. The plane, one sentence each. Sean, will the president get that plane as Air Force One and then take it with him into retirement? Yes or no?
Yes.
Dan.
Oh, he'll take it. It's disgusting.
Not going to happen. I predict it won't happen. All right. Lastly.
By the way, it sounds like Tattoo from Fantasy Island. Boss, the plane.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't know where it's going to fall apart, but he's not taking that plane with him. There's just no way.
No, all right. He's not. The library will.
Exactly. We could spend 2 hours on reconciliation. There's lots going on. The marker laid out over the weekend has more for the moderates on Medicaid than for the Freedom Caucus, but it has plenty in there for the Freedom Caucus. Dan, if 0 means 0 chance of passage and 10 means the president will sign it into law, where are House and Senate Republicans on reconciliation now?
It's still a 9.5.
9.5. Dan, Sean.
Wow, we're having name problems this morning.
Yeah.
Good thing we don't have 3 people. Look, I think it's a 7 now. I think it ends up at a 10. I mean, it will pass. It's just
that's my point. They're gonna get there.
No, yep. I know. But I'm just, if you're asking where it is today, I think 7.
Sean, I agree with Sean exactly. It's a 7 now. It's going to a 10. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the People's Poll. David Burrell is here. Couldn't be more excited. Again, this is the second version. It's the only poll we know of ever that includes input from citizens to write your own questions that David will highlight for you. And we're going to run through relatively quickly because of the shortness of time. And then in my Substack and on David's website, you'll see the whole poll, the slides, the crosstabs, the methodology. you'll be able to read about the methodology. It's 1,000-person poll done, national poll of registered voters. With that, David, thank you for joining. Turned over to you to run through the data.
All right, thanks, Mark. Like Mark just said, we have a limited time today, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the methodology and share my screen and get straight to the results. We got some fun ones today.
Everyone's on message.
I need access to share, Mark.
Oh, can somebody give David access, please? Maybe I can. Let's see.
By the way, Sean, we got through 8 topics in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's impressive. Paul, can you give David access?
I'm trying.
Okay.
The code is password, small, lowercase.
While we wait, I'll remind you, noon, Megan McCain, Citizen McCain is on at noon.
He is. Yeah, hold on one second.
David, I think you're good. Try again. I think you're good.
It's still disabled.
No? Disabled. Okay. Guys, there you go. You're good now, David.
All right.
All right. Again, national poll was conducted, I think, Friday through Sunday, right, David?
Yes. Thursday through Saturday.
Thursday through Sunday, right?
Thursday
Okay. Here we go.
Everyone. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. So split this into 3 sections. The first is going through a couple fun, not political questions, and then we get some political but fun questions, and the last is where the majority of the questions from the two-way community come from. So just to emphasize to everyone, you can ask anything on this poll. This was Mark's question of the week. Actually had a couple. One, he wanted to know who wore it best. And you see there, it's actually pretty close.
Look at that. Kamala Harris won something. All right.
And we showed them the photos and they got to choose. And I did this to remind everybody, you don't have to do political questions. So Kamala Harris scores the win narrowly within the margin of error over Farrell.
And I will say, I did look at the tabs, and this was pretty similar across most parties.
Wow.
The second from Luke from Atlanta, my neighbor here in Atlanta, he wanted to know if people consider hot dog to be a sandwich. And largely America is split on that. I like this one because one of the very first times I settled an office dispute with a poll was asking if Cheesecake Factory was actually America's favorite restaurant, which it was.
Any chance you can ask if Dippin' Dots are the ice cream of the future? Because they're not.
We'll put that on the next one. So Dan's question, voters are slightly more likely to wait until...
Wait, can you go back one second, David? Did the hot dog thing, did that break down by partisan? Because I got to hope that Republicans don't think it's a sandwich.
We're going to have to put that out on our website after this.
All right.
And my team's listening behind the scenes. They'll have that on the post that we'll put up.
Thank you.
We know RFK doesn't, so.
Yeah. Okay. So voters are for Dan's question, voters are slightly more likely to wait until a movie comes out. Sorry, excuse me. Wait until.
By the way, I will say this: when I saw that thing, I think that's fascinating because that's not a good. That is really good news for Netflix. I think that's got to make the folks at MPAA, the Motion Picture Association, freak out because I was actually shocked by that a little. The number of people who are willing, which makes you realize that you got to start marketing films a lot more to make it an experience.
I had the exact opposite. The fact that 44% say film, the theater, it's crazy to me. I don't know anybody who's gone to a movie theater in about 5 years, except for kids.
Well, again, we didn't do the tabs on these, but it's not independents. They're the ones who want to go to watch at home, buying far more than Republicans and Democrats. And then another one from Mark here, best Hollywood movie featuring Alcatraz, and that is Escape.
I didn't even realize half of those were
my faith in the American people restored, because that is the right answer.
Okay. All right, so next section, it's kind of a new and a fun one, politics but fun. So again, you can ask any question you want to on this, and we're actually going to kick this off with something that I hope becomes a recurring segment in the People's Poll. And it was inspired by a lot of great submissions from the two-way community that we couldn't just put into questions. We want to make its own segment, and that's this week's Shake My Head Moments, where we kind of acknowledge, because everyone has to answer, that maybe even sometimes our own party can say and do things that are a little bit out of touch. So it's right and fit with the two-way ethos of peace, love, and understanding. And I'm also excited to say that we have partnered with a sponsor that promotes that same ethos, and that's Braver Angels. It's the country's largest grassroots organization that works together to bring conservatives and liberals together to work out their differences and reduce political polarization. They do it through debates and workshops, one-on-one conversations, and creating a lot of spaces where you can have this type of productive political dialogue. I consider Two-Way to be one of those spaces as well.
Great organization.
Yeah, one of the cornerstones though of these efforts is intellectual humility and admitting that sometimes even your own party might be wrong. So they're a perfect sponsor for this section, and braverangels.org is their website. Let's get going with the Republicans first. And Dan and Sean, I'd be curious to see if y'all haven't looked at the results, what would you thought would have been the biggest shake my head moment? Again, everyone had to answer: Republicans, Democrats, Independents. There was none of the above. Trump says, nah, the Catholics loved it, says Trump in reply to criticism of him posting an AI image of himself as Pope. House approves MTG's bill renaming Gulf of Mexico as Gulf America, or they don't need to have $30, they can have $3, says Trump, whose son had a golden baby carriage. In response,
I'm going with the Pope.
Pope.
Trump is Pope.
I'm going with the dolls. Trump is Pope. Narrowly, within the margin of error.
Narrowly. I was surprised Gulf of America got as high, but I guess that's a real event as opposed to just Trump saying things, which he says a lot of things. All right. On the Democratic Party side, Tim Walz says Kamala Harris picked him for VP to code talk to white guys. Bernie Sanders spent $221,000 flying around in private jets on his fighting oligarchy tour. Or Biden on his decision to exit the race. I was so successful, it was difficult to walk away.
Biden.
I don't know. I think the private jets is always clickbait. I'm gonna say
it is, but I don't know how many people knew it.
Well, it was in the poll.
I'm going with Biden.
Biden.
Oh,
I would have gone with Walz, but yeah, Biden won by a long shot.
I just think if it had been Biden, Walz, Bernie, I don't know, but Biden, no matter what it was going to win. It just,
you know, what's interesting is it's interesting the private jet thing doesn't stick as much. It's so fascinating.
That's why, but I just don't think I think that when you're reading it for the first time, that might be, I knew one example. I didn't realize the totality of it.
Yeah, that is a recurring theme that doesn't get as much play as I would think it would as well. But this, especially as on a fighting oligarchy tour, I think that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to these small cities. You're traveling around. Like, I get it. It looks bad, but I totally get it.
Okay, gang, we're short on time. So this is 58% of Americans believe that the upcoming 200, and this is from Turner in San Antonio, Texas, believe that the 250th anniversary can bring Americans together.
David, I got to be honest with you. When I saw the crosstabs on this, that's where I think the focus needs to be. Look at that. 75% of Republicans agree with this. Only 47% of Democrats. I mean, that's concerning to me.
Well,
see, I once again, I feel just the opposite.
Yeah,
I feel 47% is a great number for the country, that it's that high given the, you know, the Trump division. I think they can, if the White House reaches out to Democrats, I think they can get that, you know, to the 60s, which would be great for America.
This was President Kamala Harris. That Republican number would be inverse.
Agreed. All right,
oh,
David.
I don't. No. See, I think this is the way it was phrased. I think if this had said something about, do you agree with Trump's proposal, but it just says the 250th anniversary of the United States has the potential. Like, I think it couldn't have been more like just balanced of a question, and there was no tilt to that, and yet
yeah, that's true.
There was not anything about Trump or the Republican. I mean, that to me is a very
all right. I gotta call order because we gotta speed through here. So David, keep going.
And we should not have given him a no one on this option, but if 59% of voters would at least have dinner with someone in the Trump administration, maybe next time we remove Trump and no one as an option and see
good idea
where it flies. And again, I am going to move fast. Normally we can spend more time on this on a future episode, but okay. 66% of Americans, of registered voters, think the economy is harder for their generation compared to their parents. I thought the crosstabs were interesting here, because, you know, the 18 to 34 and 35 to 54, it just kind of descend when you do that much harder one.
Interesting.
From Meghan McCain, 46% of voters are willing to spend more on everyday goods to protect American industries, but are split on the amount. I thought that was an interesting number. We also did an age crosstab here. Was actually more interesting than party, which was expected. So again, this is going to be on our site. So, and Mark will be putting on Substack, so y'all get to dive in, and the full crosstabs as well. Mike from Grand Rapids, 58% think that the United States is currently in a Cold War with China. So very timely here, and very even across Republican and Democrat. Did you see?
Yeah, interesting.
Voters are slightly more likely to believe that the federal government should have a limited role. That's from Tom in Baltimore, Maryland. Actually, we'll get into more detail on this maybe on the website, but this is a viewpoints where you're listing two viewpoints. You're saying really which viewpoint do you agree more with, as opposed to a strict poll question. Voters believe Trump's involvement with crypto just crosses an ethical line. This is from Elizabeth in Austin, Texas. Obviously, Democrats more likely than Republicans, but interestingly, independents pretty much even with Republicans on that one.
Pretty high Republican number too.
Yeah. Party should be taking advantage of that.
And then politically, now again, this is another viewpoint one, but definitely timely because of the pharmaceutical advertisements. So we listed two viewpoints and said which do you agree more with. The proposal is a good idea. Pharmaceutical ads mislead consumers, drive up healthcare costs, and encourage people to ask for medications they may not need. This proposal is a bad idea. A ban would restrict free speech, reduce public awareness and of treatments, available treatments, and take away patients' ability to make informed choices. So much more of the country said good idea. Obviously, Republican proposal, and I think that's more where they are on this issue now, anyways. But y'all have anything else you want to say on that since this was in the news today?
Go ahead.
All right. So 8 in 10 voters, nearly 8 in 10 voters, support to restrict schools, but are more split on how it should be done, with most preferring school policy. And this is from Joseph from Northbrook, Illinois. And as you see, this is, are you a parent? And those who are parents are more likely to say by legislation.
I think this is one of those issues where Democrats could try to get on the right side of something. Yeah, it's a big deal in local communities.
Yeah.
Agreed. David.
All right, I think this is the last one. So 49% of voters support U.S. troops intervening in Mexico to fight drug cartels. 39% oppose. I think that this is a great question from Ken in Miami, and very split on party lines, but it doesn't seem to be with the independents a losing fight. So everything on immigration continues to still work.
Right. David, thank you. Sean or Dan, any questions for David or comments about the poll?
Awesome.
No, I nothing aside of some of the partisan stuff. It's good.
Yeah. Anyway, as David said, you'll get a link in my Substack after the program to the crosstabs, the deck, and then they'll also be on the WIC website. And we're so grateful to Kevin and everybody else who submitted questions. I know a lot of you submitted questions that didn't make it into this survey, although more of you you'll see your questions in the full survey than in the slides David showed, because it's not the whole poll. And we'll have another one soon. And thanks to Braver Angels and to WIC for working with us on it. David, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're waiting for the President and Secretary Kennedy to come on in. And when they do, we'll take it live and look at it at least for a little bit. We'll watch it in a respectful manner in what I like to call mystery political science theater. We'll comment a little bit without talking over them, at least not too much, or at least not on purpose. So for now, we're gonna take your questions, and we'll keep watching.
Can I make one? I know we had this, can we just pull? I want to show everyone the Clorobachar. I know we have it ready. Can just on tariffs, because I think this is important in light of everything that's going on today. So if we can show that Clorobachar clip on Meet the Press, that'd be great.
By all means, let's do it.
Obviously, I'd like to see less fentanyl come into our country, and that should be on the table for discussion. But the way this has been handled from the very beginning, Christian, and the American people know it, chaos is up, corruption is up, and costs are up. Sure, I'm glad they're talking, but they have assessed 10% to 25% tariffs on our allies, the very people that we would need, our friends and allies, in order to deal with China. So to me, they've been approaching this all upside down. Targeted tariffs, yes, but they should be working within trade agreements like the Canada-Mexico trade agreement with the U.S. to strengthen that, instead of these across-the-board tariff taxes on all Americans. And now a baby tax.
So I think the key thing was the question that she got asked, which is, if Trump is successful in doing this, will you admit that he was right? And again, now we're going back to the process. And I think that's important, just because Democrats, it's funny, if Trump is, and Dan, always makes the caveat that, like, we'll have to wait and see, but they can't even now admit, hey, if it actually ends up working, will you admit that he, deserves some credit? And it's like, well, the chaos was and again, this just gets back to my whole point. It's always about, we don't like how we did it. Well, the way that it's been done for decades hasn't really worked well. So it's amazing that that's the fallback position now.
Well, I think if he is able to truly materially get like a real deal done, he will borderline be on Mount Rushmore. He will have taken on the Chinese and broken them. And that, amen for the United States of America. The flip side to this is, if all of this is about, and what we get is a fentanyl deal, I think he has done real damage in the minds of voters for what they've gone through and what potentially was on the, horizon, because people knew it in their communities, in their businesses. So I think he better get a really good deal. And if he does, he deserves credit.
I just to back this up, because I know you didn't mean this, Dan. But like, a fentanyl deal is a huge, I hope and believe he'll get more than that. I want market access, but the idea of stopping fentanyl flowing into this country is a massive deal. The number of people who are killed and injured because of what fentanyl is doing in communities is in itself. So let's just make sure.
John, you would agree, putting the entire U.S. economy on the brink for a fentanyl deal was not what he pitched.
No. Just to be and again, that's why.
But yes, in a vacuum,
what I want is market access, and I want a fairer playing system. That being said, if we walk away with a massive fentanyl deal that protects our country, you know what? Maybe that's not what I entirely wanted, but I think the idea of that many lives being protected is worth a couple days of disruption.
And just to be clear, what I want is a change in the dynamic that's pervaded for 50 years, where we had no leverage over the Chinese. And whether that leverage is in service of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., or getting more access to the Chinese market, or having them deal with fentanyl, or having them be less of a military and diplomatic threat in Asia or Africa or Latin America, I'm for all of it. And anything that gets us leverage. And Joe Biden did nothing to get us leverage. He kept most of the Trump policies in place. Secretary Bess this morning said that the Chinese say that Biden people didn't enforce them. I don't know if that's true or not, but
they lectured. Remember that first meeting in Alaska? They lectured. The Chinese literally told Jake Sullivan to sit down. We didn't have leverage. We were treated like petulant little children. So the dynamic is flipped, and we need to reassert our aggressiveness, our authority, our dominance. And I think, if anything else, that's happened.
All right, I agree. We're going to continue to look for the president, but in the meantime, Jim, welcome in. Unmute, tell folks where you are, what you have on your mind today.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for you to see me today.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what we were all thinking.
Pleasure is all ours. Yes.
I understand the other day when the Pope decision came down at the NFL offices, I understand that Roger Goodell was handed a card, and he stood up and said, with the #1 pick in the 2025 Pope draft, the Vatican Cardinals select Robert Prevost, Bishop, Villanova.
I like it.
That's my shtick for the day.
We like it. Thank you, sir.
I'm looking quickly. It seems that the market seems to have a positive response to the weekend's activities. Take a look at that. So anyway, first time, long time, found you from Megyn Kelly, the lovely Megyn Kelly. And my biggest issue in general, I don't care if you're a liberal, I don't care if you're a conservative, I don't care how you vote. My biggest problem with this country is the press. I feel that over the last couple of years, especially, they have shot themselves in the foot. I personally have no trust in our national media. I feel like when you see a trial and a prosecutor or a lawyer is doing cross, were you lying then or were you lying now? How do we trust what we're being told after? And this is just a random example. Jake Tapper says to somebody, well, that's President Biden stutter, and now he's releasing a book to blow open the whole he was mentally in decline. I mean, how do you trust a news organization that carries water for a particular party? Isn't the press's one of their planks of their platform is to be the watchdog of government? And how can the press be a watchdog for the government when they carry water for one particular party? I mean, isn't that a massive failing of what the press is supposed to do?
Thank you, Jim. Dan, and then Sean.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think, look, this is not just a progressive, the media with progressives. The other side has an entire media ecosystem that carries the water for it. It does. I mean, it just flat out does. And by the way, they're some of the most popular networks and other things in the country. I mean, so you're seeing the rise of independent media. I think the free market will take care of this. But you're right. When the stories are written about how the legacy media collapsed, part of it will be they catered to one audience only, and it killed them.
Sean.
Yep. I talked about this legislatively last week with someone, and I think a little on the show. But you go back, you look like how they treated Robert Bork, and then what happened after that, how Harry Reid treated the filibuster. And it's the same thing with the press. They went so far to the left, got so far into the pocket of the Democratic Party and the liberal establishment. And then people go, well, now you've got Fox News. Everything that we have on the right has been a reaction to how far the left went. And for them to complain now, they're right. They exposed, laid threadbare how in the pocket they were. I don't mean to say this in a pejorative way, Jim, because I think you're absolutely right. But having been through this myself for 30 years, like most people, as bad as you think it is, it's not even a fraction of how bad it really is. These guys have no qualms doing what they do. They're never apologetic for how bad they are or how bad they get it wrong or how in the pocket they are of the Democratic Party. So I echo everything you're saying. I just, to some degree, wish people really appreciated how really bad it was and how most of these people aren't just liberal, but they're not actually good at what they do. And you look at how they supposedly report the news, it means standing there and reading what someone says to them. There are, it is actually a pretty pathetic group of people, especially at the White House and who cover Capitol Hill.
Jim, thank you. Grateful to you for coming in and asking that question. All right, let's do something experimental. I'm just keeping an eye on the president, whether the president's going to speak, and we'll take him when he does. So here's an innovative idea. Ooh. Let's do 2 Matts and 2 Aarons all at the same time.
Ooh.
Think of that idea. All right. So, guys, I'm going to ask you to ask your questions briefly, all in a row, and then we'll answer as many of them as we can before we see the president. Aaron R., you first.
Yes. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody. My question is, we're seeing sort of a reverse Liberation Day bounce in the markets. And I'm wondering, independent of, your guy or your team on one side, do you recognize, or do people recognize that if we brought tariffs down, and I know this is a very unpopular view, that we would get a substantial bump, not just in markets, but across investment, across pretty much all channels of growth and development?
Aaron H. Thank you, Aaron. Aaron H. Question.
I was chiming in, raising my hand to talk about the plane.
Okay. What question?
I guess I'm not sure it's a question. I think I fall down somewhere between you and Dan. That the plan is so insane to me that he would transfer this thing after about 4 years to a private entity, which is his library.
Yeah.
That I just feel like it cannot happen.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Yep. Hold on. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Matt O.
Morning, guys. Wanted to chat for a second about Trump's battle with higher education and get your opinion on what is he actually targeting. Is it China with the IP theft, the funding, the Confucius Institutes? Is it Qatar and the other Arabian Gulf countries that are financially supporting the anti-Semitism? Is it the DEI and woke indoctrination on campus? And how far do you think he's going to go past the elite universities that aren't, part of the poison ivy, so to speak?
That is a short question, and we could spend 2 hours answering. Great topic, Matt. Thank you. All right, Matt, 100%.
My question was really on the tariffs. So if we have about $1 trillion deficit on trade, and I think 300 billion or so is China, doesn't the rate matter more between the differential between China and Vietnam, Malaysia, et cetera? Wouldn't we just be in a better situation if a whole bunch of trade that is currently with China migrates to other countries, and then one by one you could try to fix the imbalance? So rather than a $300 billion deficit with China, build a $50 billion deficit with Malaysia and 50 with Vietnam, and then go try to drive exports there.
Great. Okay, so Sean, that's 2 trade questions, an education question, and a can you believe the plane question. Go.
Can you remind me of the education one? I got the other ones.
Well, Matt's just wondering, and Matt, you tell me if I got it wrong, that there seems to be a lot of different thematic threads to what the administration seems to be wanting to do with higher ed. What is Trump's actual kind of core goals in taking on reform of higher ed? Matt, is that good?
Yeah, it was basically the thread about, is it about China? Is it about Qatar and the other Arabian Gulf countries? Is it about DEI and woke indoctrination? And he's targeted Columbia and Harvard so far, but how far past the quote unquote poison ivies do you think it would go into other university systems?
Great question. Sean.
So I think generally speaking, it's about stopping the DEI and the woke stuff is pretty much the focus, the direction of of elite universities, and the opposition to to transparency, to freedom of speech, et cetera, I think is the general nut of it. Although I will say that there's a little bit of other, as you pointed out, some other threads in there, some China, Confucius centers, things like that exist. But I think most of it just has to do with the drift towards the far left. On the trade stuff, I would just say this. I think that the idea of trying to shift everything or I just don't know that you can actually manipulate things that way. And I think at the end of the day, what this is really all about is, and this is why the comments that I've heard before about, when Amy Klobuchar says treating our friends and our allies, like, again, I go back to this thing that I say over and over again. What kind of friend charges you a 50% tariff to access their market when you have a 1.5 average tariff rate in your country? That's not a friend. That's not an ally. That's someone who's taking advantage of you. Asking for fairness and equalness is not a bad thing. That's actually the opposite. I mean, that's what friends should do. And then the last thing I would say is, just so everyone understands the plain deal, and this is where the media, again, is gaslighting you, is that you may not like it regardless of how I explain it, but just this is what's actually happening. The bottom line is the Qataris are giving the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, a plane. That there are gifts that happen, not at that magnitude, but that's how a government-to-government gift works. So when the president of the United States or the press secretary or gets a gift, it goes to the United States government, gets logged in. Then what's happening is part of the deal, the conditional deal, is that they're saying after X amount of time, it will be transferred to the president's library. Those libraries are actually government entities. They're controlled by NARA, the National Archives and Records Administration. So it stays part of the government. Presidential libraries, they don't have to be. So just to be clear, there is a caveat. But all of them are. Eventually, the Nixon Library for a while wasn't, and it did come into form that they are governed under the National Archives and Records Administration. So it stays a government entity. And I get that some people still might not be happy with that explanation, but the bottom line is, guess what? If it comes to fruition, they've just gamed the system better than everybody else, but it stays part of the government.
Shorter, Sean Spicer. It's a bribe. Dan.
Thank you. Because if Kamala Harris took a $200 million Aspen house as the Western White House, and then afterwards it went to her presidential library, you may melt down.
From a government with,
exactly,
with great interest before the United States.
So I mean, look, I'll just quickly, Aaron, you're right. Trump knew it more than anyone. The markets will go up. It's why he's getting out of all of this as fast as humanly possible, but winning. So just watch how they declare winning. Like, the plane thing is just so absurd. It's hard to count. Matt, it's what Barack Obama tried to do. It's called TPP, encircle China with trade deals with everyone else. Like, that is how the system works in a game of three-dimensional chess, right? Everyone has their own domestic interest. And Matt, I will add one last thing to yours, which is they happen to be progressive-leaning, democratic-leaning institutions. He is targeting anyone and everyone that he thinks will help weaken the party. And they telegraphed this for months. How's that?
All right. Very good. Gentlemen, very grateful to you all for coming in. Sorry to be a little bit shorter than usual, but still waiting for the president to come out, which I suspect he will shortly. And while we wait for that, let's bring in Jackie. Jackie, welcome in. Thanks for coming. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind.
Oh, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. So two things actually, and I'll make them really quick. John Federman, I'm from Pennsylvania. So I watched this one, and it occurs to me that we've been bashing the media and all the people in the White House that covered up for Biden. Now we have people around Fetterman's circle that are raising alarms, and nobody's believing them, or they're saying, oh, it's a left-wing conspiracy because Fetterman. So I don't understand. Again, here we go with hypocrisy, you know, my favorite subject. So that's my one question is, I think, Mark, you alluded to some other big news coming down about Senator Fetterman, or someone ahead last week alluded to that. And I was just curious if you guys have heard anything more about that. I just don't know how we square the whole, nobody around Biden raised a flag, and now we're bashing them. Everybody around Fetterman seems to be raising a red flag, and we're bashing them. Like, these people, you know, I wouldn't go into government. You couldn't pay me enough at this point to go into government. Also, the reconciliation bill, I am so ticked at Congress and the Republicans. Between the Tom Tillis and the Tom Masseys and the Lawlers, and I like Lawler, but I heard a report last week that New York State, the governor has a slush fund of $10 million to help the Letitia James, the people who are getting in trouble by law. Yeah. I want my money back. I do not want SALT, the cap to be raised if they're going to spend money to defend. And it's my impression from the reporting that this slush fund to be used by government employees or government officials can be used for anything, even if it's private, which Letitia James is, that's private. This was mortgage. Yes. This was her private thing.
Yes.
I want my money back. I don't want SALT raised. How can he justify he's going to bat for SALT?
Yeah.
When you have this kind of crap.
All right. That's a lot of good stuff. I will say, in Fetterman, I really don't understand why Republicans are being so outspoken for him. If it's genuine, because I think he's a great guy getting a bad shake, or they're trying to recruit him to switch parties, or they're just trying to make mischief with the Democrats. But I can tell you, behind the scenes, Fetterman's behavior warrants the commentary it's gotten plus more. I can tell you that. Sean.
So first of all, I agree with you. Like, let's just be clear. And I'm glad, Jackie, that you're bringing this up, because I think that John Fetterman should get the help that he needs, right? And if he's not, and two things can be true. I sincerely, like, if he's got issues, mental or physical or whatever, I hope to God that he gets the help that he needs. But putting him in a position and creating a wall around him that says we can't criticize him. His own staff is out there. I get, let's not be mean to him. Let's not pile on with him. But at the end of the day, this guy's representing the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Get out there and say, hey, dude, you got a Democratic governor. Step down. Go get the help that you need or deserve or whatever. But we should, anyway, I'm glad you're flagging this, because you're absolutely right. And it's not just the contrast with Biden, which I agree with you on, but just on its face, if somebody's not capable of serving, and I agree with that on age. And so for everyone else there, like, yes, some of these guys who are getting wheeled around so that they can cast votes is ridiculous. And I don't care what party you're part of. So that's number one. Number two, I agree with you. I'm so disappointed in so many of the senators in particular who love to go home and campaign. Josh Hawley coming out over the weekend and saying that he wants to, it's like, guys, at some point we got the mantle to lead for a reason. And I'm embarrassed that some of these folks who love to go out and campaign about a deficit and threats that we face are the first ones to run to the microphone and crap on the deal. Shame on them. Shame on the Republicans that aren't part of the solution and are are part of exactly the same thing that goes on every time, which is kick the can down the road more and more and more. So again, thank you for doing that. And on the last thing, I don't necessarily agree with you on the SALT issue, meaning it's a federal tax deduction, so that should be decided on its merits. But I agree with you that this idea that Letitia James is being investigated for personally lying, claiming that her home of record was here in Virginia while she was Attorney General of New York, doesn't seem to play very well. And the idea that there's a potential that the taxpayers of New York will end up paying for her personal case, I hope whether it's Lee Stefanik or Mike Lawler, that becomes the central theme of their campaign. How arrogant and how elitist of Letitia James and Kathy Hochul to say that this is appropriate.
Dan.
I'll be quick. I think in New York, I would not be surprised if that deal was cut to try to get the backing from certain constituencies for Governor Hochul in a primary. I think aligning herself with Letitia James in a primary probably might, she thinks, serve her purpose. On the Federman stuff,
let me stop you, Dan. Sorry, I apologize. We're going to the president.
Presidents.
Thank you, Jackie.
My administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And they did it for a lot of reasons, but trade is a big one. We're going to do a lot of trade with Pakistan. We're going to do a lot of trade with India. We're negotiating with India right now. We're going to be soon negotiating with Pakistan. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed. So I'm very proud of that. I also want to thank Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio for their work and efforts. They worked very hard on that. We also, as you know, created a situation where the Houthis, for the first time ever, have ceased firing, and they've let it be known that they're not going to be firing at American ships anymore, not going to be firing at Americans anymore. This was a heavy barrage that lasted for approximately 50 days. And as you know, they've been in war essentially for forever. But over the last 10 years, they've been very difficult for other countries. Nobody was able to do what we did. But they stopped, and we take their word for it. Their surrogates and them directly said, we don't want to do this anymore. And so we were satisfied with that. In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs. Because they don't want to pay 25, 50, or 100% tariffs, so they're moving them back to the United States. I spoke to Tim Cook this morning, and he's going to, I think, even up his numbers, $500 billion. He's going to be building a lot of plants in the United States for Apple, and we look forward to that. I really do look forward to that. But the talks in Geneva were very friendly. The relationship is very good. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. and they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week. We have some other things we're doing. But one of the biggest things that we're doing, and I don't know if people realize this, but we made a great deal with China, great trade deal, but it was a much bigger deal originally, and then they canceled it right in the last day. Some of you faces I remember were there when that happened. I remember you. And we had a deal where they opened up their country to trade with the United States. And they took that away at the last moment, and then I canceled the whole thing. And then 6 months later, we ended up doing a smaller deal, but it was a big deal. It was $50 billion worth of product that they were going to purchase from our farmers, et cetera. And we agreed to that. People thought it was 15 because they were doing 15. We made it 50 because I misunderstood the 15. I thought I said, you got to get 50. Because when I asked, if you remember the story, when I asked, what are we doing with them? My Secretary of Agriculture at the time, Sonny Perdue, said, sir, it's about 15 billion and we're asking for 15. And I thought he said 50. So I said, so they came back with the deal at 15. And I said, no way, I want 50 because you said 50. They said, sir, we didn't say that anyway. Bottom line, I said, go back and ask for 50. And they gave us 50. And they were honoring the deal. And we would call them up a lot for the corn and for the wheat and for everything. They were honoring the deal. And then when Biden got in, they no longer honored the deal. There was nobody to call. I would call on an average of once every 2 weeks to say, come on, you have to speed it up a little bit. And our farmers were doing great. I said to them, buy more land and bigger tractors, if you remember. That's what happened. But the deal was a very good deal. But the best part of the deal was that we opened up China. China agreed to open itself up to American business to go in. And it would have been a great thing, I think, for China. They would be able to see things that they haven't seen. They would be able to buy products that they had never
Okay, we're
been
going
able to buy.
I mean, this is
It would have been
what's
great
so
for American
fascinating that he's
business.
bringing
It would
this
have brought
up.
unity
Paul, go ahead and
between China, better
take us
unity
out of
between
this, and
China.
just Dan and then Sean briefly comment on what we've
I mean,
heard so far.
I'm actually really surprised he just went there because it will remind everyone China never honored that deal. They hoodwinked them. We ended up subsidizing our farmers with $25 billion to try to help get them through this. They never made any of the purchases under Donald Trump. For him to bring this back up, if I'm the average person, it's like, we're trusting the Chinese. Like, we don't have a deal. We have an agreement to continue to try to get a deal. And the last time I made a deal, a lot of it never materialized. You can't make it up.
We're not even at the farmer thing, and that's what I think is the big one today. So I hope I get why he has to recap that. Obviously, a lot happened over the weekend that we noticed, but like this pharma deal is going to be the big hopefully big news.
It should. It's huge.
he's going to talk, as Sean correctly stated. He's going to talk for a while, and then he's going to get on Air Force One on the long flight, and he's going to talk more to the pool. So expect a lot of sound to analyze with Donald Trump tonight on Two-Way Tonight. We are doing Two-Way Tonight live on the Two-Way platform for those of you who watch here at 4 p.m. Eastern time today, 4 p.m. Eastern time. So join us then. It'll stream on YouTube in full at 6 o'clock the normal time. So if you watch on YouTube or X, you can watch it normal. If you want to be part of the conversation, please come at 4 p.m. Link is in my Substack. Sean, what do you have tonight?
We're streaming the president live from Air Force One on his trip.
No, you're not.
You'll have to look at 6 to find out.
Wow.
Okay. Well, you're not going to be live because he's not going to be talking at 6 Eastern.
No, 6 p.m. It's on the plane. It's going to, we're working on the tech.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that. At noon today, remember Meghan McCain's show is on at
China
noon.
will also suspend and remove.
Hold on. Kill the audio. There you go. Noon Eastern time. Meghan, her guest, Mary Catherine Ham. Again, Citizen McCain now noon Eastern, Mondays and Wednesdays. Look for that. My guests on Two-Way Tonight, forgot to mention Matt Gorman and Ian Smith. And again, if you're interested in the full People's Poll, you can look in my Substack or on the WIC website in just a moment after we conclude here. Gentlemen, spirited hour. Thank you for sharing it. And
we'll talk prescription drugs tomorrow, I guess.
Yes, we will. We'll be back tomorrow. It's going to be fascinating to see how Democrats react to the executive order. but we'll see you in 23 hours. Thank you for watching.
Cheer it.
They should.
Cheer
We'll see if
it.
they do. Have a great day, everybody.